All right. So immediately following what was episode 83 of the Anatomy Crosscast, or no, Jesus, what? Immediately following what was the live over on Sean Cross album listening front to back live stream, then going into the Anatomy Crosscast episode 83. Well, welcome back everybody to the show today on Friday, August 2nd. After I think doing only like 2 reschedulings, really, hoping to not make a habit of that, but transparency, right? Being accountable for my own shit. We are finally here. We are sitting down with JJ. We are also attending to a podcast opportunity in which, well, JJ here was very kind in being productive, being proactive in creating and recording his podcast intro. So, of course, after doing the other bands that we've done recently, piecing together what will be an episode for the return of To the Grave with the entirety of the modernized 2024 lineup of To the Grave, promoting, doing an early album listening session for Everyone's a Murderer. In fact, more than a month earlier than what the album is planning to unleash upon the public, right? More than a month earlier than its premiere. Now, we conquer the favors, we conquer the sessions regarding those who have been reaching out to us, those who have been really, really awesome in getting everything done and being ready, being present, being available. That's the most important thing. You have to honor those opportunities. We have to respect those opportunities. And well, unfortunately, when other artists and bands decide to not only stop getting back to us, but just not be in contact whatsoever after recording the initial podcast, whether it be because of touring or other not so integral reasons, it's like, well, we kind of have to move on. So today, after listening to Invoking Havok, we have the questionnaire that I do believe we've sent you, right? Okay, awesome. So using that as a point of reference and with only one member in chat, the only member of Jeelzebub being JJ, Jeelzebub himself, as far as I'm concerned, we have part 1, which is talking about the people. This is your opportunity to tell your story as a musician, but from the very, very beginning of when you decided to get into music. There will be a, so far, 8-part questionnaire. And because of the lack of multiple members, right, we can most likely just we can cut out question 8 regarding, quote, what do members of Jeelzebub do for fun to connect outside of musical creation? We'll probably just cut that one out because it's like, well, what do I do? So instead, we will have 7 questions for JJ to answer just on a more personal, more human level. And then in part 2, as always, we have the band part of the podcast. And I think that'll be pretty easy for one person to temporarily depersonalize and speak for his project, speak for his one-man project. So we start with number 1, which I do believe I have updated the wording due to recent guests being confused upon the context of the question. So question 1 quotes. Take 10 to 20 minutes to provide the audience and listeners an overview from the very beginning of you first finding your calling in music, how that changed throughout your beginning education of the real world, any other hobbies or mediums you wanted to pursue, the building blocks of your eventual financial backbone that allows you to recreationally support your music, and how that all might have fed into the band you are now actively participating in. That was a loaded one. So for sure, if you have any questions upon the context, let me know. But otherwise, take it away.
I was, oh God, like 7 or 8. I was really, really young when I, first really figured, hey, that's something I want to do, I think a lot of it was wanting to play guitar. My uncle Jimmy, phenomenal guitar player, he got me, I think, my first guitar. I think you can actually see it right here in the corner. and I started teaching myself, and eventually actually got with my uncle, and he taught me quite a few things. And then we'll just go through with multiple guitar teachers, and it was around that same age I would take like buckets and bins, and I had a pair of drumsticks that I put my earbuds in, play along, and would figure out how to do that. Grandparents had a piano at their house, so again, around 7, 8, 9, would be messing with that all the time.
Okay.
And then fast forward to like teenage years is when I got my first 7-string, I think, first drum set, and that's when I really like established this project and started, doing things like using 4 tracks, or trying to record one track of an instrument and then record another track of an instrument. And I was experimenting a lot with making music and writing lyrics. And I mean, I started actually writing lyrics around the same time that I started wanting to play guitar. So those two have been my main things, from a very young age, that have kind of led me to here. And then the last 4 years, been learning a lot about production, and a lot about writing, and actually structure and stuff, just trying to become a more cohesive, better artist. And I mean, I was about to say also, I picked up, so this is pretty cool. Another instrument that I was very inspired by when I heard Shadow of Intent's Reclaimer was cello. And I decided, you know what, I want to get one, and I started taking cello lessons. And I used cello on a couple of the songs on Invoking Havok, and I've used cello on a couple other songs. But that's another instrument that I started playing about. I was more of a late teenager, around 16-ish, 17-ish, but yeah. I mean, it's all got us to here, experimenting with different genres. I also learning, because metal is not just all I listen to, so I feel like I used to try to help when I was younger, and later into my teenage years, try to help make beats and produce for my friends. So always dipping my toes in different stuff. And yeah, I think it was also, I was 9 years old, and I saw the music video for Nightmare by Avenged Sevenfold. And that's when it really clicked with me. You know what? I want to do all 4 of those things right there. I want that, like, and I love that appeal of like, that's what, I think got me into, as I've gotten older, liking darker music, heavier music, even, darker horror movies and stuff like that. Is that Avenged Sevenfold video was very...
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, very impactful.
Yeah, no, that's actually really interesting to hear, because usually, as per the 82 episodes prior to this one now, just thinking back and going all the way back to April of 2021, you have plenty of folks majority of bands, majority of artists, plenty of musical composers that were all about Metallica when they were young. They were all about Pantera.
That's also another band. I got my Quebec magnetic CD or DVD, their live DVD,
Right.
and again, I was like 8 or 9, and yeah, that was another thing. Seeing them on stage, sweating and headbanging, I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. Yeah. Metallica.
But the thing is, the reason I mentioned that is like just the first band that comes to your mind. And for you is Avenged Sevenfold and Nightmare, right? Alongside the other bands you've already mentioned. For other people, it's been Slipknot. So more or less just vocalizing appreciation for seeing like different interpretations and kind of breaking the status quo and kind of breaking the chain with what we usually hear on the show. It's always a breath of fresh air. But
yeah, no, Sevenfold, and a lot of people are going to be very surprised to hear this. My Chemical Romance. And I don't know, man, something about them. And this will also shock people is I got into them with their Danger Days album. I was not a Black Parade kid. I was a Danger Days kid, and I don't know why that album had such like a, I don't know. It was very different to me, especially with songs like Sing, Planetary Go, Vampire Money. You know, I was very mesmerized by the tracks on that album. So yeah, Sevenfold and My Chemical Romance from, you know, about age 8 to age 9. From seeing music videos and, you know, surfing YouTube and yeah. Disturbed too. Disturbed's another huge one. Down with the Sickness album. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I mean, that's a great way to start. And I think one way to immediately just kind of continue the momentum of this question would be kind of looking into the financial backbone that was quoted in that question. So when you're getting involved in this industry, you're attempting to do the homework, you're attempting to embed yourself into the framework of this world that we understand. What was one way, what was like the first major way that you would accumulate financial resources for what you're doing today? Because I think that's a very important question to ask behind the scenes is like, how are you affording all this on your own?
So, I started working 16-ish, I think. And you know, over the years, obviously, save money. I've been very gifted. My family's a lot of I was about to say my 7 and 8 string were both Christmas presents. I was about 14 when I got my 7 and 15 when I got, or 14 when I got both of them actually. But you know, as I started working around 15, 16-ish, I started saving for, you know, studio equipment, you know, things like you know, different cords, microphones, shit, simple shit, strings, goddamn, all that, and yeah,
There you go.
just
And
working,
I think just like it's very important to
working for it.
if not anything, briefly discuss like how you ended up acquiring everything that you did, because chances are like maybe you were buying all of your equipment off of the producing and the beat making that you were doing for your buddies and shit, you know.
Oh no! I was never making uh, any money. That was for a long time. I was really into making my own beats, and not only making beats for other people, but you know, taking their songs. You know, I guess what you could call producing, mixing, making them sound better, beefing the bass. You know, cutting out sharp treble. You know, making their vocals sound better. and I've always been very into that, certain style of music, hip hop, rap. So, but I never made any money off of doing nothing like that. A lot of this, like I was about to say, I got my drums way younger. Actually, I got my drums before my guitars. I was 12 because, I had said up until that point, I used to get buckets and bins and drum on those. My parents one day were just like, you know what, let's get them a set. And then over time, I would save money, work and, buy equipment like cymbals and sticks and snare heads and shit like that. So yeah.
Sweet. So utilizing then, and can kind of bumping off of that question for sure. Let's see. We got question 2, which reads, who got you into music? How did they do it? When did they get you hooked? And are they still around to take the credit?
My parents. So, oh God, they got me into hard rock and metal. I was practically, I couldn't even talk yet. Shit, I was like 2, 3, hearing stuff in the car like, White Zombie, Megadeth, Devil Driver, Non-Point, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and both my parents were in bands, so and they were both bass players in bands. And I used to hear my dad's band all the time. My dad's band was if Killswitch Engage and Korn kissed and made love. It was some good shit, yeah. And I got to hear that a lot at a young age, and they still are around to take credit for that. Without them, I wouldn't be into any of the music that I'm in today. And as a matter of fact, I credit my mom the most because Lamb of God is, and we'll get to them later. Yeah. But I'll just say real quickly right here, favorite band ever. And she's the reason because she had the Ashes, Sacrament, Wrath CDs. She's seen them live over like 10 times. And it was one of those situations where I was like under the age of 12 trying to listen to them. And she was like, no. And then it was like, I was maybe 13, 14, where she was like, I guess. So, and dude, ever since then, I would do shit like, draw their logo and put them in my locker at school, like, and Lamb of God is all because of her, because that's one of her favorite bands. And I'll tell you right now, that's as heavy as my mom and honestly my dad gets. My dad will get kind of heavier sometimes. Like, he likes a little bit of the new metalcore, not straight deathcore, like, we'll say like Ymir, Alpha Wolfie type shit. He can get down with that, but they don't like the blast beats, the screeches, my mom, Lamb of God, she says it all the time. That's as heavy as she gets. Lamb of God and Devil Driver. That's as heavy as she gets. And without them, I wouldn't have wanted to explore more and find more on my own when it comes to heavy music. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and what's really beautiful about scenarios like that, because they've occurred on the podcast before. We've had people who have parents who are involved, but not both of them being in bands. That's kind of a new level of involvement. That's really cool.
Yeah, my mom was in 2 super serious, like, original content bands when she was in her 20s.
Okay.
Same thing with my dad. And my mom recently has actually started playing in cover bands, and she's been doing local shows.
That's sick. That's really cool. Man, imagine if you wanted to get into sports. You're like, fuck.
No, what's crazy is I was a sport kid for a while. I played soccer, basketball, baseball. I played almost everything but football and hockey.
Gotcha. No, that's funny. So you're like, oh, thank God.
But I came around. Yeah, luckily I came around.
That's great. And I mean that's the thing too. That's the beauty of that is when both of your parents are involved and they're actually in bands themselves as you're growing up, that could easily be the reason that, well, because kids want to be the opposite of their parents, they want to get into sports, or maybe they just want to be a corporate businessman and just be a corporate overlord.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, like kids
think like they want to be a lawyer. They
want to work for the man, and your parents like, fuck. But let's see. So growing up, as you got, this would be then question 3, quote the scene. And this would, I think, kind of encourage you to personalize and tell about your own version, possibly, of their story, because you grew up in that household. And then I can only imagine eventually, because you eventually came around, that you would start getting involved in the scene yourself. When would you say you started getting involved in your local scene and maybe going to local shows, getting associated with school local bands, or maybe bands from the school next door in your county, whatever the case may be? When would you say they all started for you?
So in school, definitely, because school was the, one place where I was, I felt like I could be connected to people with, over music. And a lot of the people that I've met to this day, that I still know, they're the reason, I still listen to some bands, they're ones who are like, hey, check this band out. Now they've been one of my favorite bands for years because of that. Getting together with other, musically inclined people at school and doing things outside of school. I never went to many local shows growing up, but of course, my mom was very, she liked to take me to a lot of shows. So, and she would, Christmas presents, birthday gifts. Hey, we're going to see this band,
That's cool.
So, not necessarily local shows, but I did, get to see a lot of bands that I really, really liked growing up that way.
Not many people can say that.
Yeah.
That's actually really neat. So then time continued and you started getting to know people from your school who were also into the counterculture scene at the time. And you said that some of those bands you even listen to now. So that, I think, follows really well into part B, where, yeah, you were part of a music scene, but are there any local heroes that you got to know growing up that are currently climbing the ranks?
Isn't Andy Biersack from Black Veil Brides from Columbus, Ohio?
Ooh, I think so, yeah.
I would say him, yeah. What's really cool, when my dad was in his band, they were on tour and they were actually opening for Black Veil Brides back when they had put out their first album. And my dad got to, shake Andy's hand, and I think that's pretty fucking, it's pretty sick. Got to shake his hand before, he got to shake Andy's hand when Andy was wearing Hairspray.
I do like
Andy Biersack for sure, and I love Black Veil Brides. They're instrumentally, even vocally too, great band.
Their newer shit is really, really good. I like that they're finally turning into a heavier vein.
Yeah, dude. The not the most recent, but Veil, the Orange album that they put out in 2018, I believe. That record, that's got some of the, I think it has the heaviest Black Veil Bride songs they've ever
Ooh, okay.
Wow. Songs like The Outsider, My Vow, Throw the First Stone. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Hold up. Because the thing is, okay, wow. No, I completely missed this record. Because the thing is, I kind of jumped off after the self-titled.
Yeah, and the self-title's got some heavy tracks too. Faithless is probably
Faithless
has the heaviest breakdown, dude. Like that song is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely forgot about Veil. Shit.
That's actually an album I got into because of my dad. When it came out, he was super into it, and he was like, "Have you heard this new Black Veil Brides album?" And I was like, "No." And he sent it to me. I clicked play, and what's the first track? The last one. When I heard that opening riff, dude, I was blown away. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
I'd never heard him in that, production scale or that heaviness.
Oh my god, yeah, that's right. Veil is the one with all the angels on it.
Yep.
Oh shit. Okay, I might have to go back and listen to
the guy with he's on the crucifix.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, cool. So definitely have to go back and listen to that. See, despite what you've told me recently, I kept associating you as like a California local artist. So I'm like, wait, Columbus. Oh yeah, fuck.
Midwestern boy.
And that's the thing too, because then you can also reference bands like Beartooth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really, really big one. Yeah, they're from Columbus. Or at least Caleb Shomo's from Columbus.
Really good.
And therefore, more directly, you end up being the Caleb Shomo of black metal over there. Like, where all these dudes coming from? They're doing all the shit by themselves. Yeah, Columbus. Okay. So then, following that question, because more or less you're talking about bigger bands, so maybe there aren't any friends that you met in school, in high school or junior high.
Not exactly. I wasn't super like, I was very, okay, here's the iceberg. I was like right here, barely on the second tier, when it came to the scene and, getting really deep into local bands and underground bands and music. It wasn't until, very, very late teenage years, almost 18 years old, I started doing shit like that.
And what's ironic too then is that our co-host, Finn, the Orc King, is actually from Columbus himself.
Hell yeah.
And he's got a band called Infectorium that is meant to echo like Worm Shepherd / Mental Cruelty, Black and Deathcore.
Oh, I love Mental Cruelty. Dude, A Hill to Die Upon, that's such a good fucking album.
Such a good album.
Whatever, with
Lucas.
vocalist, I have honestly because that was such a quick drop off, barely anything, really came out. So with that album and the most recent album that they've done with their new vocalist, dude, they are on some other shit. What's their instrumentalist's name?
Ooh,
he's the dude with the real long hair. He's a newer member. I think he joined.
Oh,
he wasn't a part of the band when they put out the album with Planet of Misery.
Right. So Null.
Yes. Something about his writing style just takes that band to a whole nother level, dude.
I agree. I really do agree. And
that's how I feel like when Gabe joined for Luciferus. Yeah.
Yes.
Same thing. Like the writing style just went.
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, what's really cool too is that most of the clean, more like glorious clean singing that you hear on Zweilicht and A Hill to Die Upon, that's Null. I didn't realize that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, A Hill to Die Upon and Zweilicht were both really, really good records, and I'm just hoping that Mental Cruelty's next album isn't, as far as the album cover, isn't a blatant ripoff of Lorna Shore, because I saw the Zweilicht cover. I'm like, wait a minute.
I'm a little guilty of that. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a blatant ripoff, but I was very inspired by The Reaper, and that's what I did for my Abysmal album cover.
Right, but with Mental Cruelty,
obviously, the side with all the text and.
Well, okay, so.
And it's by the same artist too, isn't it?
Same artist who made all of his art free domain because he actually passed away.
Stokerman, right?
Huh?
Stokerman. or not.
No. The album cover, that was done by a Swedish artist, but the artist in question passed away a long time ago. So basically, his managers, his friends, his associates, they made all of the art that he made kind of like public domain free access. So it's like whoever uses these first and claims these first can use them for their albums. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, oh, literally it's the same format. It's just a different color coding. There's a horse in there too. In the end, it's like I don't
still a great artist.
Yes, still a great artist. It's just like the rhyming, the visual rhyme that was occurring was like, so hopefully they do something a little bit different next time. That's all I'm saying. I'm not here to shit on Mental Cruelty. That's not what I'm here to do at all. Because we love the guys in Mental Cruelty. We really do. And y'all was actually meant to be the first member from Mental Cruelty to jump on the podcast alongside Luca, and that was back during the Hilda Diapon cycle. And then, well, what happened, and he just kind of like, boop, he just disappeared. I'm like, oh, well, there goes a podcast opportunity. But that's super sick. I love that you ended up mentioning Mental Cruelty. And shout out, of course, to Finn, buddy. Love you. Hope you end up recovering here pretty soon, because I know if I got 3 of my teeth ripped out, I would be hurting too. So final part of question 3 would be, were you in any bands or band projects before, and what caused the fork in the road that had you depart from those projects if you were involved in anything else other than Jeelzebub?
Okay, so let me see here. The very first project I was ever in, it was literally 2 months before I had formed or established, per se, the Jeelzebub project. And back then it wasn't even Jason Jeelzebub, it was just Jason. Jeelzebub didn't come into play until like 2020. But
I see.
Basically, first band, oh God, it was in 8th grade. I was 14, and it was, so I was the vocalist, guitarist, and I kind of just said, well, I don't have a bass right now, so but other guy was a drummer, and a lot of creative differences in that band. He loved a lot of more under, like, really, really, like, not even, I wanted to do more of the theatrical core, like really big, groovy headbanging. He wanted to do like more of the, I guess, acid bathy, ANALCUNT, no FX, that type of deal. And we quickly realized, I just part ways. And that's a couple months before I had actually started forming my solo project. And then it was, I think, oh man, I was in, so I started putting out vocal covers during quarantine, actually, 2020. And because prior to all that, this is, over years of, I guess you could, it was 2017 when I had that first band, and then after that kind of fell apart, I took time to myself to really do some solo stuff and figure out, how I'm going to do it, how I want to do it. And come 2020, I started a format of putting out vocal covers of the biggest songs, or, some of the biggest singles by, metalcore and deathcore bands. And I got noticed by, funny enough, the vocal cover I got noticed on was Infernal Fucking Darkness by Shrine of Nemesis. And I got noticed by Aaron, by of Victims of the System. Victims of the System is a death metal / black metal band from Scottsboro, Alabama. And he hit me up one day and said, do you want to be a recording artist for us? And I can tell you right now, this is the only project where there's absolutely no bad blood. Victims of the System actually just put out a new record. Your boy features on it twice. So, and complete banger of an album. Malicious Intent, Victims of the System. But I was with them from 2020 to I want to say 23, 22. And it was kind of just, for me, again, it happened to be, it was more, I wanted to focus on my solo work for a little bit. And, as time went on, as a recent time, I was in a band, and I won't say too much because I'm going to be completely honest. I think this is one of the worst experiences I've had. And I mean, needless to say, it was just a lot of collateral damage, members,
Okay.
not, being up to par. And we were making some really, really good stuff. But I had to remove myself, and I said, you know what? 3 strikes, you're out. I've been in 3 projects, realized, I just think, with creative differences, how people can be, and, just the fact that I like, this isn't to say that I don't like playing with other people and writing with other people, but I am very, very, wrapped around with having full creative control, having, full grip of the joystick. Like, I'm not, nobody else is hitting the buttons, like, yeah.
Sometimes, after all, it's better for you to be at the forefront and make the decisions, be that Caleb Shomo for your project, and that way there's no confusion, there's no creative difference. Because I mean, you gotta take a look at Beartooth and see how far they've gotten, how successful he's been when he's basically just hiring in artists and having them play a certain roles, and then he'll do guitar every now and then, but for the most part he just does vocals, because that's always been what he wants to do. So,
yeah, that's another thing, is the only band I was a front man in was Victims, and that was one thing that I've always wanted to do, is I wanted to be
in the forefront. Yeah, that's fair. So definitely gotta keep that in mind for the future, as Jeelzebub continues to do what it does, and as you continue to do what you're doing in general. So then we migrate over to question 4, quote, location. So this is talking about Columbus. This is talking about the city that you grew up in.
Columbus is actually, and I said Columbus rural because that was, I think, where Andy Biersack's from. I am from Dayton, actually, Dayton, Ohio. Now my city wasn't. Well, did you finish the question? I don't think you finished the question.
Right. No, you're good. You're good. You're fine. More or less. By all means, go ahead and correct the context real quick. That way we can kind of use that for reference.
But yeah, no. Dayton. I actually grew up in Huber. Was born in Huber. Grew up in Huber. Then have migrated around to multiple cities. Now I'm, rural Dayton.
Okay. Maybe perhaps then the reason you mentioned Columbus is because Dayton and Huber are part of the major Columbus area, or?
Well, Dayton and Huber are very close together. Columbus, I think it's either Cincinnati. And listen, this is kind of messed up that I don't know the capital of my own state. But it's either Columbus or Cincinnati. Look, don't come at me, y'all. I'm sorry. Look. But it's either Columbus or Cincinnati. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are hours away.
I see. Okay.
2 hours.
Yeah. Using the word rural, like, you're definitely not in the major cities, right? You've always been in smaller towns
Yes.
over in Ohio. Okay, cool. So I mean that also provides vibe and that provides more context. So question 4, part A. What is something that you can tell us about where you're where you're from, geographically speaking? And this question more or less also asks maybe what other people in other states around the country might assume about where you're from. And I know that sounds silly because it's Dayton and Huber. Like, what are people? Well, what's going around? What's cycling around? But you never know.
Okay.
Maybe you heard some stuff from people just touring through town, not touring, but like being tourists, adventuring through town. Like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a city that looks so nice, but it's so small. And you're like, okay. So if you've had any of those moments, if you've heard anything about Dayton or Huber, and you're like, no, that's wrong. I'm here to correct it. Like that type of shit.
I mean, well, I'll start off with we have for local, and it stretches out through a lot of Ohio. We have really, really great pizza called Marion's.
Ooh, okay.
And a lot of people, especially people that I talk to out of state, will be like, huh, when I say this? We've got the big 4 of pizza: Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Domino's. Marion's every time. I don't know what it is or what they do. Which is so good. If you're ever in Ohio, look for a Marion's Pizza. I'm telling you, it's so good.
So would you?
They were established, I think, in like mid '60s.
Okay.
So
well, let's go ahead and
quite a long time, actually.
Yeah, let's go ahead and actually share this. Let's go ahead and provide some context. Is it spelled like Mary Ann?
So it's Marion and then S. Yeah, Marion's.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do this real quick. Marion.
And now, what's funny is they spell it Piazza, so Piazzza, but it's really pizza, obviously.
That's interesting.
I mean,
so not only let's type in that, but I love that the first city it recommends is Dayton.
Yep.
Let's see. So Dixie Drive. What's the one that you go to the most? That way we can get some visualizers here.
Oh man. I'm not exactly sure, but it's by the Dixie Drive one.
Okay. So let's go. We're doxing
but they're all good. They're all
Oh, this actually looks really cool. Okay. Well, maybe not the website. Okay, so let's get some images here. This actually looks really good. What the heck? And then the building too. Look at that.
Yeah, it's very nice. Like, it's the type of place that you don't just call an order. You go there. You sit inside.
Go there, yeah. Ooh, I like that. That looks really good. Pretzel bun sandwiches.
And what's great is the windows. You can even see it. They have a like some type of, I don't know what it is, like sheet that even when it's night out, it will always look like it's daytime inside to keep keep the vibe up.
Whoa. Okay, that's fascinating. Maybe there's some type of light that they have in the walls because these are brick walls, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so those are like authentically just brick walls.
Yeah, straight brick. Yeah.
So you gotta wonder if they have like any technology in the windows or something. But no, this looks really cool. And they got a little arcade here too. They got a little.
Oh yeah, they got a whole arcade room.
Ooh, this is cool. Wow, that is a gorgeous cake.
And they have, like in big restaurants, they have a certain room where some of them, not all of them, but some of them have certain rooms where you can isolate for like birthday parties and stuff.
Oh, that's sick. Okay.
Yeah. Super cool. Lots of nice artwork on the walls.
Yeah, very colorful. But like, I'm seeing a lot of like gold and green. Like, look at those floors too. Wow, that's really cool.
I've had probably like a quarter of my birthdays so far here.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can understand why. Like this looks really, really good. And of course, I'm a pizza guy. I'm a big pizza guy. And one of the things I daydream of doing with Blind once we fart, Jesus. Okay, once we finally start, touring, okay, I want to go to as many local pizza joints as possible.
Oh my God.
Man,
Well, yeah, if you tour in Ohio, dude, Marion's 1000%.
This right here, this looks like a Philly cheesesteak. Oh, there's a video.
I think it is. Yeah, I think that's their Philly
cheesesteak pizza.
And see, now a lot of people would say, well, it's not triangle cut. Well, first of all, if you argue over how your pizza's cut, come on, you're still 14. And second, listen. You can have the best, not even just New York style. You can have the best Chicago style pizza. I've been to Chicago. I've had Chicago style pizza, and I love it. I've had almost every style of pizza, but I'm telling you, and that's the thing about Marion's. They don't do pie cut. It's fully square cut. And it's so honestly, and I'll tell you, I think they use oregano. Like sole oregano and nothing else. And I don't really see pizza places do that.
Okay.
So I think that's one thing that makes their pizza really stand out.
Yeah, fair enough. No, it looks really, really good. And I think the future lineup of Blind will really look forward to going to this place. Look at it. Good old freaking token Eldritch White Man. Love this. This looks really cool. So you will definitely go there at some point in the future. So yeah, the pizza, you said that's a big part of it. Some of the best pizza, including the top 4. So I mean that's a really good recommendation for touring bands going through Columbus is just Marion's Pizza.
Oh yeah.
What are some other like positive things that you can kind of recall about your area that kind of conjures a certain city local pride within you? Because I mean, you think to pop culture and you think to things like Stranger Things or maybe even the Goonies taking place primarily in Astoria, Oregon, which is like an isolated island fishing town. And it kind of has a similar vibe to the setting City, right? The place where most of Dark Shadows, the Tim Burton film, takes place. It's a very, very similar vibe to that. And ironically, without even realizing it, I ended up attaching my own novel that I'm planning to make in the future, starting with the prologue or even like a short prequel thing that's going to remind people of Riverdale for certain reasons. And then it's going to kind of project and completely take a 180 into a more sci-fi influenced version of the Chronicles of Narnia. So that should be really, really fun to get assembled and put together over time. But you got to think of like where you grew up. And in Columbus, it seems it's very, very green and there's plenty of water around, maybe a little bit more vegetation, more foliage, more culture than perhaps Nashville or Middle Tennessee. So what are some things that you've noticed about the cities and towns that you've grown up in that you don't really see anywhere else?
Well, in a lot of the places that I've grown up, there's a lot. The downtown areas are very architecture, the architecture. You get what I'm trying to say. Very aesthetically, pleasing. It's oh God, I was about to say one of the courthouses in one of the cities. Dude, I've never seen this before, ever. I've found a couple examples before, but one of the courthouses that used to be in the downtown of a city I used to live in has this giant ass like clock tower connected to the top of it.
Ooh. Okay.
And it's got these like, it's got two sides to the courthouse. So there's like these big giant fountains, like essentially like 3 foot deep fountains with
Ooh.
geysers and shit. And I just think, for a courthouse, you think of a courthouse, you think of just a straight slate building,
That's it.
Oh God, let me think. Look up Troy, Ohio courthouse clock tower. Yeah, like see, a couple of those are ones that I've noticed.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Especially with that green statue up top. That's
Yeah,
sick.
and actually look at that sky view right there. The statue on the very top of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Who is that? Who is that?
Oh man, my grandma told me one time. I forget.
He's Lady Liberty.
No, that's actually I thought, because when I was very, very young, like under 5, I used to think the statue at the very top was
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty. Yeah.
I know I would too. That's more or less why I made the joke. You're like, Grandma, it's a Statue of Liberty.
And she told me, I can't remember though. It's
But yeah, it is, sweetie. It's her younger daughter.
But yeah, no, I always that building was always very mesmerizing to me, and the downtown was connected to a big river. And yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
And see, this is why we have the first half of the podcast session. I don't know why, but this is just so much more visually entertaining to me. Sorry for all of our audio listeners, but I mean, granted, you'll have the video over on Spotify as well. To me, it's very interesting, and it's very, very important to kind of do this slideshow shit. It just provides more of a visual representation of where our guests come from. This is really cool, actually. I love architecture, and architecture, it tells history, right? It tells a story about where you're from. So, I mean, I love that you happen to mention your appreciation for this architecture. I think I see what you're talking about. That might be a sidewalk, though. I'm like, it's fine, guys.
Where is the? See if you can find a picture of the sides with the fountains.
Fair enough. So this is it the Miami County Courthouse, or is it okay? Fountain. Just add fountain to the end of that. Okay, yeah. Is that what you're talking about? Just that in the background? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. And it's like, it's a tiny part, because that's like when you're walking up, it's like, if you don't look to your right, you're probably just like, oh, cool, water. But it just adds a little bit more spice. So I can see where you're coming from. That might be kind of a better view of it, because it's across the street, as opposed to just being right there. You're like, oh, I just got water on my shoulder. Dang it. As you're going to court. But no, that's really cool. And what's interesting, what I think is very, very remarkable, actually, is that I knew that you were going to talk about the architecture, because in the Midwest to the east, I'm noticing Franklin is probably the most example catering city I can describe in response and comparing to this conversation, contributing to this conversation. That's actually a really interesting view. There you go. Got a whole freaking, like, that's cool. It kind of looks Greek right there, really, with all these going on. But Franklin, Tennessee, people, let me show you Franklin, Tennessee, the hometown of Paramore.
Which actually, my mom used to visit Tennessee all the time. My mom's actually from Georgia, so
okay.
Used to visit Tennessee all the time. I've been to Tennessee a few times, actually.
Yeah, no, dude, my new hometown, guaranteed. Born and raised here in Phoenix, in the Valley of the Sun, and it's called the Valley of the Sun because the sun is always poking down.
Valley of the Soul.
Bro, I wish. Valley of the Soul sucking. I don't even know.
Well, I think soul's actually a different definition for sun, or it's different language.
Oh, right. Soul is an SOL. Yeah. In the wake of soul, then, yeah. In the wake of the sun. But people, like, this is what I want to return to so bad, because I remember certain parts of Tennessee when we were over there. Just this is what the mountains look like. This is what the mountains look like. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's so pretty. And then on top of that, going back to the conversation a little bit, talking about Franklin, like, this is kind of the architecture of most of the city, but they have like really nice theaters. They have this one tea shop, Jenny's Tea Shop, where you kind of learn how the Chinese and Japanese approached tea drinking, and basically doing what we would make fun of and turn into tea parties, where you have these tiny little cups. And, well, basically, if you give someone, say, this much of a can, and this is what, like 16 ounces? Math. Anyways, if you, in China, say you sit down and you give people a full mug worth of tea, that's actually a sign of disrespect, because you're basically wanting them to be bloated by the time that they leave. And if you give them multiple mugs, well, naturally they're going to be a little bit more bloated than just, I feel nice and full with the hot tea that you just served me. And it's a whole like disrespect thing. Like, hey, I want you to be fat, or whatever. I don't remember the dirty people. Yeah, it's interesting though. And Franklin was such a beautiful city to visit. But yeah, for anybody who didn't know, Paramore actually is from Franklin, Tennessee. And I found that out when we were living over there. I'm like, wait a minute, because I looked them up on public domain. I think they had released a new album back in 2022. So that's also why I was looking. But me and my buddy Riley, we had been listening to them for a long time. So naturally we were curious. Naturally I was curious. And then I found out that they were from Franklin. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, this just, I don't know. There's just something really pretty about this that I can tell that Paramore didn't exactly abandon. You know, they weren't just like, the city's for chumps. It's like, no, the city is actually really, really pretty, especially at night. Like, there are so many cool little spots. But I would recommend anybody visit Franklin, Tennessee, because they also have this like really nice AMC theater that I have yet to go to. I really want to go there though one day. But continuing our conversation more or less, would you say your history in the place you grew up and were born in affected the way that you would write music? And if that is a yes response, would you say it affected you in a not so great way? Like, maybe you were kind of tired of the small town life, you know, like what was going on in your brain, and what type of emotion and what reasoning do you attach to your music as far as your geographical identity, if that makes sense? It's kind of all these questions are loaded.
Well, now, you know, I'm not trying to bash anybody or anything, you know. In school as kids, we act out, but a lot, and I was about to say, I've been to a few schools, and a couple of the schools that I've been to, you know, like I said, with getting friends that were into, you know, similar music and would also recommend me music like that, had also, you know, because listening to bands that I've never heard before and really enjoying their music. If my dog starts making noise, I'm sorry. She's just right now, and she's
having a dream.
She's acting like she's about to start barking in her dream. So
no worries, buddy. Thank you for that.
one thing I think that can really shape a person, and I'm talking more lyrically, I
Yeah.
guess, when I say this. Some of the schools that I went to were, very, very heavy on uh, if you were an outsider or you looked any sort of different, you were treated, you know, not by staff, but obviously by your peers as different, or
Right.
like you shouldn't be there, and I feel like going through that, for multiple years at one certain school, and then maybe experiencing it again, um which, again, I'll say, having those friends that was also into the same music and would, even help me discover new music, helped me take my mind off of the external stuff that was going on. But the external stuff definitely influenced a lot on how I write things lyrically, and
Gotcha.
just the image and direction, um, and then um, yeah, I mean that's about it. It's really the schools, geographically, that have kind of, you know just everything around it that have shaped it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we did end up having the conversation during the front to back session, during the critique portion of that live stream, where we were talking about associating albums and music with real life experiences, maybe even food. Because I know, funny enough, because of the time that Mental Cruelty's A Hill to Die Upon came out, I think everybody's going to find this really funny. When I listen to that album, my positive memories actually just, I think of the Carl's Jr. Western Bacon Cheeseburger. Because there were often times where I would ride my board down to the Carl's Jr. that is off of roughly Dobson and, that's not true, not off of Dobson and Southern, but it's like if you go east, if you turn right on Southern, when you get off the 60 on Dobson, and you go down to the McDonald's, there's also a Carl's Jr. across the street from that.
Right.
I'm doxing where I used to live.
Mhm.
So I lived in an apartment complex that was at least a 10-minute board ride from that, but it was only a 10-minute board ride as opposed to an hour board ride. And
Right.
we were also right next to what used to be the Fiesta Mall that is now nuked, dematerialized. It's not there anymore because they hadn't had it open since the beginning, since the pandemic kick started. So when Mental Cruelty's A Hill to Die Upon came out, I was oftentimes either driving my car over to that Carl's Jr., or I would board ride over there and I would get either the breakfast burger that they had there, which is super good, but probably super bad for you. And then if it, that, it would be the Western Bacon Cheeseburger. And dude, it was just so good. I came back home and then I would be listening to this album on the way there. I would listen to it again later. And I mean, at the time, a lot of people were like, yeah, this is what Black and Deathcore should be, despite the album being made by a prominently slam band.
Right.
So it was just a good time. It was a really good time for the scene before Luca was booted. And more or less, like, that's what I'm talking about. Maybe you associate the music that you've created with where you grew up in some ways. Maybe you think of the green of the trees and the foliage around your area. Maybe you think of Marion's Pizza and
That's
the,
another thing. A lot of, and it's very wooded, very very landy around here. Lots of your forests and your crops, and your fields, and a lot of for people who you know follow me on Instagram and see like photos on Apple Music or Spotify, you'll see that a lot of the locations that I'm in are wooded areas or outside
okay,
or in
right,
front of cornfields or shit like that. That's I've always loved. Very uh, what's the fucking word for it? landscape nature, widespread nature, just,
You like dense brush. You like dense foliage, dense forests, and all that.
yes. Yeah,
you prefer
and
to have animals as your neighbors instead of people sometimes.
yes, and I'm a very big fan of fall. I love
Yes.
when the leaves change and they fall off trees, and we go into winter, and then we go back into spring.
Yeah. No, that is just the greatest thing in life to me, and that's why I've fallen in love with Tennessee. Like, unfortunately, dude, out here in Arizona, the only thing that really happens is that, at least in the Phoenix Metro Valley area, you'd have to go up to like Flagstaff, Payson, Prescott, Alpine, whatever, to actually see any seasonal changes. Down here, you just see a lot of trees lose their leaves, but like not nearly as many trees as what there are in the Midwest and out east.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. The other thing that has really inspired, how season changing, and a lot of people will kind of think of this a little bit weird, like, is it really true like that? But dude, after 21 years, I think it's pretty goddamn true. Seasonal depression and seasonal emotional changes, that shit's real, dude. Because when you get into, really dingy, like below 15 degree, even sometimes below 5 weather, really cold, really hot, steamy, swampy weather sometimes, like it can really make for, just completely changing, how you feel for a little bit. And that also, I think, helps a lot going into writing and making music, because I'm going to be so honest, writing the music and making the music that we're dealing with here takes a different state of mind to make, for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think what's the most important, and I've found this in my own experience living in Phoenix, because we're talking about geographical location. I think the most depressing thing ever is when you don't have the opportunity to experience seasonal change. You're like, what? That's impossible.
Yeah.
Well, you can't tell the difference between all 4 seasons. It's like, well, here's the thing. If you live in one of the second place, driest and hottest state in the entire country, for whatever reason, and you don't have humidity, you don't have that many animals who are here anymore because it's actually too damn hot and it's getting hotter every year. When you don't really see the world changing around you as time goes on, that also fucks with your psychological state a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So that's why being here as long as I have, I am so excited to leave. The housing market doesn't help either, but I think
dude, it's expensive as hell over there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really expensive. But mind you,
I mean, it's expensive over here, but shit, I know the West Side is really it's really struggling right now.
It really is, and it doesn't really seem like we're having a recession anytime soon. So that also doesn't help. But no, that's beautiful, and it's undeniable, really. The creative mindset, whether positive or negative, that sprout from where you're from, and that's why I decided to include the location part in our more personal, person-to-person musical enthusiast personality questionnaire. So I think more or less we got part A and B covered for question 4. C, this would be the final one for 4. Would you say you are connected to this day to where you were born and raised? Kind of this in the same context that we were just describing, if not why.
Hell yeah, definitely. Because, once you live somewhere your whole life and you never migrate anywhere, I mean, out of state wise, like obviously you can take vacation, but when you live, in a certain place around those certain rural areas your whole life, I just feel like you become accustomed to, that place you never left. I feel like it's home sweet home. Like, I honestly, feel I could travel or visit any state and be there for any amount of time, I still think, you know, I would call Ohio home, you know, just because it's a lot of emotional connection to a place that, you know, you've never left.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a part of you, and you carry
Yep.
that with you wherever you go. Sweet. And that's
Same thing with the seasons changing too. I feel like it'd be so weird not to have winter. Like, I'm so used to that. I'm so used to, like, oh shit, here comes the fucking snow on the ground.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be very weird.
And honestly, that's a funny thing too, is I call it the law of the desert. You see it depicted in films, you see it depicted in a lot of media over time, and more exaggerated are the examples of the Sahara Desert or any of the deserts out in Africa. But the thing is with Phoenix is it doesn't get that much colder, and really there are only 2 seasons down here in Phoenix or Tucson. So it's either it's really hot and some of the birds are coming out, but not nearly as many because most of them are actually dying from heat exhaustion and just kind of falling to the ground anyway. Or you have winter where all the animals are hibernating, and if you have tinnitus, it's a nightmare. Just no sound. No
and not bashing it, you know,
Yeah.
love to the state, but at least we're not Florida.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
I mean, dude, they're practically summer all year round almost.
Well, I wouldn't know. I haven't been there yet, but
Well, I was about to say I have a couple friends up there. My family's actually taking vacations up there. It is, I mean, dude, it's practically hot all year round almost. One of my buddies said where he is specifically in Florida, the coldest they've ever seen is like 55, 60 degrees. And I'm like, are you serious? You've never seen below 40 degrees. And he's like, nope.
That is okay. You know what? I will. That's weird, man. But I guess that is the law of the desert. And that's something I was going to mention before too. Is there are certain points in the world to where, like, sure, it gets as hot as it does, but at night it gets like super cool because the sand is trying to balance it out and it kind of absorbs the heat during the day, but it has to disperse the heat as well. So that's kind of like one of the more merciful, I think, mechanics of the desert. But other than that, yeah, it's garbage. I'd rather deal with the humidity any day, guaranteed. But mind you, to Tennessee's humidity, which is not 95%, which is Florida's humidity, it's maybe like 45%. So,
but the deep South, like, you know, those rural states like Tennessee and Georgia, like, dude, it gets hot as fuck. That's swampy fucking hot. Like, like, bro, you feel like you're literally just showering in your own sweat sometimes.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, that would conclude question 4 then out of 7. It's like, dude, what?
Yeah, I know there's a lot, like, you know, numbers, and then you have counter.
Yeah.
Questions.
Exactly. Yeah. So question 5, are you a gearhead? I would only assume you are. Current setup, dream setup.
So my current setup, okay, so it's a 7-string ESP LTD. The line is M17. It's a 26-inch scale length guitar, or sorry, I think it's 25.5, almost 26, I think. Tuned to drop A. Use a 5-string custom red 26-inch scale length Conklin bass, tuned to drop A. And for a lot of the previous work, I was using my 8-string ESP LTD H308 with a 26-inch scale length tuned to shit, drop F, drop E, drop D sharp, drop D, all over the place. And no distortion pedals, no whammy or overdrive pedals. The only pedal that I've ever really got into was the Digitech whammy DT. The specific one that Buster from Humanity's Last Breath uses. I was using that for the last album. I don't have the pedal anymore. Because I just figured I like the more, I don't want to be constantly switching tunings or doing too much with octave work because I know some of those sounds too that I was using before, and a lot of sounds that a lot of bands like to use nowadays are. I mean, I'm talking specifically, when they're doing high pitched whammy stuff. Some people's ears aren't exactly,
Yeah.
I've never been quite that big of a fan of it, but
Okay.
yeah, and no, like I said, no overdrive pedals or nothing like that. The guitar and bass through, I got custom presets on my DAW, so I've got a bunch of stuff in there with like EQs and compression, and then there is one distortion pedal, obviously, but it's just built in. It's not like a brand distortion pedal. It's just it just says distortion. So, or actually, no, I'm sorry, it's a rectifier. That's what it is. And that's it for the current setup. Now, dream setup. Two. Okay, well, honestly, two more things. Or you know what? Actually, no. One more thing. It would be simply the ESP LTD EC 258 8-string guitar, and that one specifically because it is a Les Paul style body, but it has the flag ESP headstock, and it's 26 inch scale length, which is what most of my guitars are. And one thing I like about that guitar is it looks like if Slash played death metal.
Okay.
And it's ESP. ESP are the guitars that I've always used. So yeah, I would say just that guitar. And honestly, I mean, I may get the Digitech whammy again, just because it's easier to have a pedal to change tunings, if you want to actually play in something different versus having to fuck up your action and completely tune your guitar. But I'm very complacent with tunings because I've always been a drop A guy. I feel like drop A is extremely, like, you can practically do anything with that. But yeah, dream setup, ESP LTD EC 258 8-string.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not a gearhead myself just yet. So
Yeah, I mean,
stuff I'm kind of oblivious to, but I think it's always nice for gearheads who might be listening to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot to go get that myself.
yeah, no. Oh, ooh. One more thing. I want a Aki or an Aki Pro, a MIDI keyboard.
Okay.
MIDI keyboard, because right now I'm using a Casio full size keyboard plugged into the fucking interface. So it would be a lot easier to not only have a MIDI keyboard, but to also have a beat pad for my little hip hop indulging.
I see. Okay. No, that could be really cool.
Yep.
And I do wish you luck in acquiring that new toy as soon as possible.
I've seen a couple good ones for some good prices, so I've been thinking about it lately. Yep.
Okay. Well, question 6 we have: what lessons have you learned as a person or musician, and how did those lessons drive you, or how could they apply to others trying to accomplish what you have so far?
Well, I think the biggest thing, dude, stay focused. Like, the more time spent and the more, the more drive you have to make things better, or to make things bigger, larger than life, to just the want to keep grinding, it's going to help you out a lot in the fucking long run. Like, you are going to see massive results over time. Like, it's, I hear a lot of people say, well, I've been working for this long and I still just keep fucking working, dude. You absolutely never know what could happen. And, even if nothing does happen, guess what? You get to say you worked your fucking ass off,
Right.
And I think, that's just something to be proud of in itself. Work,
Doing the
work.
homework.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, just biggest lessons, stay focused, keep grinding. If you know what you want, go for it. You'll never fucking look back.
Fair enough. I like that. Easy, simple, but very, very applicable to musicians and music enthusiasts in all tiers and mediums of this world that we love to keep running. Question 7. 5 character slots, whether new favorite artists, albums, singles, or people that help push Invoking Havok to its final state.
Okay. So, Suicide Silence I'll put that at number 5. Now, if I had to give a specific album, No Time to Bleed for sure. I mean, I've been listening to that album and Suicide Silence since before high school, even. And they've always had, guitar work, drum work, especially giant impact. Cannibal Corpse for number 4. And if I had to give like any specific album, a Skeletal Domain. As again, same thing with No Time to Bleed, and honestly every band and album on this list. Just musically, vocally. I wouldn't say lyrically with Cannibal Corpse, obviously, but on earlier works actually a little lyrically. But Cannibal Corpse has always been one of those bands that like exactly what you're getting into. It's straight to the point, full cut. Like, there's nothing, no bullshit. Cannibal Corpse doesn't waste time. So they've now I will say this is going to be hard because I don't know whether to put them in 3 or 2. All right, so number 3, Shrine of Malice, and obviously all of the works that they have put out, done, recorded, not put out, and recorded. I mean, and I was not there to witness the release of Malignance. I was a show baby. I discovered them in March of 2020, just a little bit after, I think, the release of Shoal. Yeah, and I mean, dude, as soon as I heard Shoal was actually the album to get me in to black metal, to get me into bands that have that structure, that have that ambience, that have crazy blast beats, crazy high shrieks, crazy background symphonics and synths and shit. And
right.
Even when I heard Oberith was a giant push into me wanting to do things like implicate brass and choir and strings and all the orchestral shit into my music.
Right.
And also, which we will get into this in a little bit, but since we're on the topic of Shrine, if it wasn't for Greg and Chris, I wouldn't be doing vocals or guitar the way that I do it today. And when I say guitar, I mean lead guitar specifically, because I was so intimidated by becoming a lead guitarist or learning how to play guitar solos up until I heard Carnal Beast.
Right.
And Chris has been my poster child for wanting to shred and just, do crazy guitar work. So
yeah.
Same thing with Greg on vocals. So yeah, Shrine takes that place. And I would honestly say that's same thing about number 2, Thy Art is Murder, with CJ, Andy Marsh, Lee Stanton. I mean, hell, the trilogy Hate to Dear Desolation, those are, I mean, probably some of the biggest reasons why, I like to make crazy heavy breakdowns and, speeding up the song and then slowing it back down and, just doing all the crazy stuff. And then at number 1, every album, everything they've ever done, I've seen them like almost 10 fucking times live. Been my favorite band ever since I discovered them, Lamb of God. Like, they are the reason I do this shit. Without Lamb of God, there is no Jason Jeelzebub. They are, for me, everyone has that one artist or band that they, say they are, that was, and ever will. And for me, that is, Lamb of God. For metal specifically, anyone who wants to get into, true, you want to hear true metal, something that has impact and punch and, super consistent, super clean, super, not too political, but not too dark, but, or just right in the middle. Lamb of God's always, I feel like, the band I recommend, for people. And
Okay.
yeah, they're the reason, they're the reason I write the riffs I write the drum parts I write, I would even say I have, Randy's the biggest inspiration on my vocals. I think, Randy, CJ, Greg, and CJ from both CJs, Thy Art and Signs Law, CJ. Those are the vocalists that, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll put an honorable mention, Korn, just because they've been the band since I was like 6. So yeah, we'll throw Korn in there too. Just a little honorable mention.
There you go. No, that's
they're the reason I actually play 7-string. So
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, I only don't understand the influence and possibly the references, the tributes to Lamb of God, because I don't listen to them that much on my own. But I do acknowledge their place in the scene. I acknowledge that they were one of the only non-MySpace era deathcore bands at the time that would
actually, they're so they're far from deathcore. I mean, you could put, a lot of people call them groove metal.
Okay.
A lot of people say they're like Pantera on meth. I mean, I see it. Yeah, they're definitely groove metal. But Lamb of God actually started out as, so their name originally was Burn the Priest, and they were trying to be a punk band.
Okay.
Which then they changed their name to Lamb of God, and then slowly kind of migrated into this like dirty South, punchy hardcore like metal band. And I think today, what's even funny is, you said deathcore. Today they have a lot of more core-esque breakdowns. Like, they've gotten a lot more deeper into some metalcore sounding stuff as of recently, off of their last 3 previous albums, Sturm und Drang, the self-titled, and Omens. They've done a lot. It sounds like you'd be like, holy shit, is this Trivium, or is this fucking like, who the fuck is this? Like, this ain't Lamb of God. But it is Lamb of God, and that's what I love about them, is they are, I feel like, one of the most consistent bands of all time. Is you hear them, you immediately fucking know it's Lamb of God. Like, they have such a staple, like Mark and Willie have such staple riffs, and Randy just has such that, like, you hear his voice, it's fucking Randy. Yeah.
See, that's the thing too. I think the last time I was pretty ready to get into them was with Memento Mori, which I'm pretty sure that was on the Omen cycle.
Actually, yeah, it was just before Omens. It was on their self-titled. It was the first song. I love that track, dude. That song is amazing.
I remember getting like As I Lay Dying vibes from them through that song and others during that cycle.
Like,
And I'm
that's
like,
a band. It seems like that's definitely a band they've been listening to a little bit since the self-titled In Omens, for sure.
right.
For
But
sure.
I guess I have yet to get into them because all of their album covers, like I usually like consistency. I usually like a consistent aesthetic. But with their album covers, they've all been like too similar. So I'm like, okay, when are you gonna like shake things up? You know?
I see what you mean, but I feel like they've always had a storytelling, like,
Yeah.
uh, uh, vibe, like, uh, not necessarily their first one, but As the Palaces Burn, had a very dirty look to it, and then Ashes of the Wake brings in this, like, very Greek ancient look, and then Sacrament, becomes very straight to the point with the chalice and the body and the blood.
Yes.
And then I think, I'll say this, and hopefully a lot of people agree with me. I think the best Lamb of God album cover was the Wrath album cover, the one with the L, the O, the G, and then the bone wings going out of it. I think that that really summed up what Lamb of God was not only sounding like at the time, but just their overall vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to do
And I do
some.
see what you said, what you mean. They've always had a very similar pattern with their album covers, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess I've always been like a visual person. So if the logo turns me off, then chances are I won't listen to the band. So
Which is
obviously,
another thing I do like about them, is they've never had a logo change. I mean, except for the Wrath logo, and when they took the font and just put it, instead of like, there's a term for it when you bring the font down, like you return the font. They just brought it up, but yeah, no, they've never had a logo change, which I
right.
also love, because you see that a lot. Practically almost every band has a logo change at one point in their
Right. Well,
time. Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's like there's definitely a point for a logo change. And I mean, whether it be seen as a marketing inconsistency or not, because I can see where people come from if that's like what their verdict is about those processes. But for me, it's also like you want more representations of your band. So for me, Shibori Threads being a great example, just from a marketing standpoint and just something new that's come into the scene, how they will have the artist Art of Darkness do like kind of deathcore versions of all these metalcore bands and their logos, and then you slap those on really, really well done custom dyed hoodies, and then you have a matching pair of joggers to go with that. I've always loved the idea of like turning the tables and seeing like what logos a metalcore band like Era will buy as like a temporary edgy replacement on merch on
Yeah,
tour.
I love when Wage War did that back in the Pressure line. Yeah.
Dude, yes. Oh my God, that was the best one. That was the
Yeah.
best one.
I think I have that magnet. Oh shit. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's sick. I love that one. I think it's funny though, because I immediately no, pardon me. I immediately saw and acknowledged that the Wage War logo that they had for one of their anniversary shows was almost the exact same thing that Fit for a King did for a newer merch line. I'm like, wait a minute,
I know
dude.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
It was the exact same artist, and like there was barely any you could barely distinguish the two, really, except for knowing that one was for Wage War and one was Fit for a King. I'm like, come on, man. I mean,
Right.
there's a difference between how should I say this? There's a difference between investing into an artist because you like the artist and just like maybe just getting the exact same font. I don't know, but that's also because I'm into logos. I've always been into logos, and I'm
Yeah, me
starting.
too. I think a logo really, it's what's going to make her, like, you see that's going to be the first 5 seconds of
Yeah,
you wanting to see what's up with that,
yeah,
and that's what I love about metal. And no disrespect to other genres like pop or hip hop or country, but I feel
right.
like that's something that you'd never see. a lot of the logos for artists, not in metal, it's very slate. It's very
clean.
It's, font oriented, like, computer font oriented, I love that metal takes the logo so seriously, because again, I feel like, you're going to look at a logo and that's going to be a big determining factor of whether or not you're going to check that artist out. And it also, it, again, with bands who don't change, like Born of Osiris is a great example. I fucking love Born of Osiris. Just saw them with Attila on their Villains and Angels and Villains tour.
Yeah.
So goddamn amazing, dude. But that's the one thing I like about Born of Osiris too, is that they've never had a logo change. And when a band doesn't change their logo, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's really, really nice, to have a change of pace. But I feel like it also, it sets in, like, they kind of like an empire almost, when a band realizes, hey, we're somewhere, let's, keep it how it is. Because I feel like when you look at that logo, you immediately know, and there's no, confusion. Like, I'm trying to think of bands that have like changed their logo, because there's been a few times where I'll look and forget, oh yeah, it's that band, because I was so used to the logo that they use on fucking 7 albums prior. So yeah, I don't know.
I think what's really important is that if you're trying to adjust the aesthetic and the musical approach of your band, that's when you change your logo. And if you want to have a variety of logos, for example, Brand of Sacrifice, I think they're a really good example of this.
Yeah.
They've had, like, I think 4 different versions of their horizontal logo. They've had 3 different boxed in logos, and then they had the main logo that they had during the Lifeblood cycle on the Demon King Crystal Dye Baby Blue hoodie that they did, where you had the woman on the album cover actually emerging from the logo. That shit was so sick. I'm like, whoa, I've never seen that anywhere. I ordered it in the wrong size and had to immediately sell it. And then I never saw the hoodie again.
Well, I think one thing that is also hard to notice is when a band, like, and shout out Frankie Palmieri, shout out Emir. Oh my fucking, I should have put them in the slots, bro. You know what? Another honorable mention, Emir. Bro, the one thing I like about their logo is for the first, so Goodbye, the Respect Issue, Felony, Speaker, well, not Speaker of the Dead. Speaker of the Dead was pure font, but practically every album up until Eternal Enemies, it was that gothic, text, and they would have the E, with the spikes on it as their logo. And then when Eternal Enemies came out, they actually switched it to like this more robotic, metallic looking, mixed in almost like Eminem when he took his logo and he put all the letters into each other, instead of having them separate, that when they did that. But what's funny is throughout the whole album promotion process of Eternal Enemies, they still used their gothic E from the original logo. Same thing with the last 2 previous albums, Look at Yourself and Hindsight. They changed the logos, or not the logo for Hindsight, but they changed the logo again for Look at Yourself. And they've had a couple changes, but they've never strayed away from, their original emblem, also giving homage to their original logo, because their emblem is their original logo. And things like that, it's almost very occult-like. It's funny, they say Amir is a cult. And yeah, because it's one of those things, again, you see it, you know exactly who it is,
Yeah, no.
It's staple for an artist.
Right. No, in that logo, I think, because, I mean, obviously, we're having this conversation, so we're both very passionate about logo design. We love the idea of the mutilation and manipulation of calligraphy and just fucking flipping it on its head and making it to where either you can't at all read what the fuck is going on, or you can if you do homework. You can if you understand the language, you understand the accent, calligraphically speaking, that's going on.
Yeah.
That I think it's a really good example of E and how they basically just had it mirrored onto itself. Very, very casual horn, very neatly done, but still a little bit of edge in there. I kind of miss when bands were that original with their logos. I really do.
Yeah. Another band that hasn't changed their logo, Suicide Silence. The only time they changed their logo was with the self-titled, when they took out the scratchiness and the dots. And that's another band that you just, again, you see it, you know it. You know, it's never shied away from its roots and being what it
Right.
is. You know, I do, however, really appreciate the original Suicide Silence logo with the scratches. I mean, it's beautiful. But
it's literally, that logo is the epitome of chicken scratch.
Yeah, no, I feel like when you look at that, you know, that defines that, and Chelsea Grin's logo. It defines deathcore. I mean, when you look at them, you know, how those logos are and what they've influenced, you know, all the bands over the last, how many years are we going? Almost 20 now?
Almost 20.
God, deathcore is getting old, but still young.
But the thing is, it just had a baby, and now that baby is starting to unleash new artists, that being Peacemaker, fucking Nine Dead, Murder Afloat, Tracheotomy, Parasitic Embodiment, just to mention a band that we've had on the show so far. What are some other ones? There are some other ones for sure. Most of them are coming out of like Cali and Florida, if not, you know, Nine Dead being from New Jersey. That's kind of the outlier variable. But
hey man, you Cali bands are different breeds.
But what about that Florida water though?
Man, see, that's what I was going to say. The two bottom like side states, Florida and California, bands that come out of there, dude, just some of the heaviest, craziest bands. Just great music out of Florida and Cali.
Absolutely. So I think that will indeed conclude the first half of the podcast session, being that we definitely covered the 5 character slots, right? That directly influenced Invoking Havok.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having a big old conversation about logo and calligraphy. So that was pretty fun. Something fresh, something new. So part 2, we are talking about Jeelzebub. And would you prefer to be called Jason Jeelzebub as if it's like a stage name, or does Jeelzebub work?
Yeah, Jeelzebub.
Okay. So now we attempt to have the one and only person in the band depersonalize regarding their own project. So question 1 reads, and this is a pretty clickbait one: how was the name Jeelzebub decided?
So it's funny too, because when I started the project, it was like 2017. I literally just, like I told you, went by my first name. And then in 2020, I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine, and I do not want to take full credit here for the name Jeelzebub. Shout out John. John, if you're watching this, love you, dude. Hit me up sometime. We were having a conversation, and he referenced the 3 major demons the unholy trinity that Shrine of Malice was using in Sheol. And we were talking about, you know, what they all, you know, the differences and, you know, the sins that they represent, and, you know, because it's Satan, Beelzebub, and Astaroth. And he made a joke calling me Jeelzebub. He took out the B and put the J there. And he just sent a one-worded text message that said Jeelzebub. I stared at it for like 30 seconds to a minute before I was just like, you know what?
I like that.
Yeah, we're running with it. We're running with it, because we were also talking about the song Beelzebub and how that was Shrine of Malice's first song, considering the fact that the very first song, one of the darkest and heaviest bands ever put out starts out so calmly and beautifully, but the name of it is literally the name of the Lord of Flies, the Lord of Gluttony. Fucking like, and I've always had a liking for that historical,
Dante's Inferno.
the darker side of Christianity, the hell, Dante's Inferno, nine circles and shit like that. And then I just, again, it's also an ode to the Shrine single.
Yes.
That's pretty much where that came from.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I mean,
also, biggest thing, you cannot have a project with just your first name. There's so, it would be hard. And I just figured at one point, if I'm trying to actually do something, I gotta have something people can remember,
Right. No, I like that. And the thing is too, whether it's a nod to, in this session, in reference to the session, a mutual, unrivaled admiration for one band, Shrine of Malice being one of my top bands of all time too, and me planning to concentrate the ferocity, the drum style of Josh Knoll, and even possibly the solo style of Chris Paz, alongside what will be The Last 10 Seconds of Life, which is going to be like the more groovy, more slow, waltz-friendly beat down and down tempo that they've always brought to the table, and they really, really brought to the table. They brought to like a whole restaurant worth of tables with this new album. Last 10 Seconds of Life is just like the heavy, groovy. Shrine is the relentless, culty, blackened, slamming aspect of it. Make Them Suffer is like more or less the female vocals being incorporated into heavier music in the first place, but on the level that it is with Make Them Suffer is very distinguishable. While She Sleeps for the clean and heavy choirs, and then Silent Planet for the lyrical depth. Shrine of Malice has definitely been at the forefront of my musical inspiration for such a long time, and there are so many singles that people will be hearing from my own project that should immediately be like, oh yeah, this was Shrine inspired, absolutely. But if not, I guess I haven't done my homework these last 5 to 7 years, or more or less 5 years, with them starting truly in 2019 with Sheol. But continuing on, what do you think separates Jeelzebub from other bands in the metal community?
I mean, just the sole fact that, you don't see many one-person projects anymore. I mean, the last one-man band that I can think of that, really was doing something that people were going, what the fuck at, was Cameron McBride of Meth Witch.
Yes. Oh my God.
It's super hard to find even two-man projects that are super tight and heavy anymore. Like Umber Void, Malcontent, Mirelure, all super amazing two-man projects. But, like I said, most of the time it's 4 to 6 people with sometimes an entire team of 10 to 30 people behind them. And, I feel like when it comes from one soul, it's so much more genuine and raw. And I feel like that's what music is missing a lot of nowadays, is rawness, like complete unfiltered, just, and coming from, one brain, one mouth, 2 sets of hands. I mean, that's as raw as it gets.
Yeah. So may I ask you, have you ever heard of Makhlvk?
I don't think so.
So that is a one-man band from Jakarta, Indonesia. Mr. Agung released his first full-length record, Welcome to the Dunia Lane, because that is the main theme of the band. And this is actually the 4th band that we've ever hosted on the show. He actually wrote the podcast intro instrumental in a day. Let's see. So he released Welcome to the Dunia Lane the name itself, Makhlvk, is actually Indonesian for creatures. And basically, because of the real life culture that occurs over in Indonesia,
Yeah.
where you'll actually hear about people pointing and blaming crimes on local Indonesian makhluk or even phantoms and cryptids, like pig demons that people can randomly conjure in certain board sessions, similar to the Ouija board sessions we know here in the US. They will actually proclaim on the news that these little pig demons are stealing their shit or breaking into their houses, conjured by one of their neighbors. But what I like about Makhlvk, and ironically enough, I'm making a new logo for him as we speak, or finishing up really. What I love is that, as per his intentions, as a one-man MySpace deathcore band, but with pop structure influence in his songwriting, he's done exactly that. I would say Makhlvk is kind of like a heavier, more MySpace deathcore version of AC/DC, especially with his vocal capabilities that I would dare say even rival that of Travis Ryan, because he can sing like as if he's Angus from AC/DC. Well, he is probably my favorite one-man band in the entire planet, and I think you'll understand once you check out his music. But
I was about to say, yeah, no, after this, send me a link to
absolutely.
Spotify.
Yeah, and we will be welcoming him back onto the show as soon as possible, because we still have yet to do press for their new album, his album, Welcome to the Dunia Lane. And well, of course, we want to get the podcast intro instrumental composer back on the show. So shout out to you, buddy. Love you, miss you. Hope you're doing well. That would be Makhlvk. So I think that will be very interesting for you to check out. And I'll actually go ahead and send you the link right now while we're still talking. But now, people, what we will be doing is we will be going under the skin of Invoking Havok. Now, this is the juicier bits, I would say, of the podcast, other than, of course, learning the story down to a very personal level about the respective guest, whether we have one in the room or we have the entire 4-person lineup for, like, a band, not to say that Jeelzebub isn't a band, because it's very impressive that you're able to do this all on your own. But it's like, the more people, the more stories that we have to tell in session, and therefore the sessions could average to 4.5 hours. Like, that shit's crazy, dude. I can't believe we've done a couple of those already. But going under the skin of Invoking Havok entails to and alludes to a great many things within the creative psyche, but most importantly, investigating, lobotomizing any and all lyrical context and substance that there is on this record from a lyrical standpoint. And possibly, because this is your second full-length album, this is also the opportunity to tell any and all kind of like stories behind the scenes, any blooper-esque stories that you could possibly tell track by track about how these songs were constructed. Maybe the original purpose and lyrical meaning, the mechanic of some of the songs were inspired by more, at the time, silly things, or you look back to it, you're like, that was kind of fucking stupid, but it worked. Those type of things. We want to dig into your mind and find out all of the emotions that ended up feeding into this record. But most importantly, we get ourselves into an imaginary scenario. And this is usually what we do. We will have you pretend that you're no longer in a band. You're going into a library and you discover your album, Invoking Havok, but as a chaptered novel, possibly intermediate level reading, right? On the front, you have the album cover, but you don't have the logo for Jason Jeelzebub on it. You don't. Instead, it's just the album cover, but it's written by Jeelzebub, and that's the credit. You're like, who the fuck is Jeelzebub? So this is also from the perspective of your audience, from your consumers. So Every book that you find in a library has that enticing, sometimes colorful book cover, the hard case. You see a Rick Riordan book, you see how colorful it is. You put your hand on the front and maybe the snake and the sword is embroidered. It feels 3D and it actually kind of like pops out of the hardcover. You turn it over though, because that's what you do with all books. And you see a chunk of text on the back. And this is supposed to entice you, almost meant to seduce you if you're that much of a bookworm, into reading the book in the first place. What do you think that intro text, that summary would say regarding this album, regarding this book?
Oh man. I think it would talk a lot about, it would start off, from the mind of I guess so and so. It's it would entail that the story starts with a lot of there's a lot of pressure at the beginning, but as you find that pressure subsides and it turns a bit more into chaos, and as things start to unfold, that story will then end with probably a more not so happy ending, a more traumatic ending. Yeah.
So perhaps speaking from the genre of most book reading, because that's how I think that's also the conversion we're looking to convey and confirm, is whether or not this was meant to be a fantasy book, maybe a tragedy, an epic. So from what I'm understanding, it starts out as an epic, but it would end up being a tragedy by the end of it. So perhaps, as per the musical aesthetic as well, maybe the substance invokes a fictional metaphor to provide some cover. That way, not all the characters, not all the people involved in the story are doxed and just put out on the forefront, because that's not what books do. That's not what they're meant to do, unless if it's a biography, right? So instead, maybe this is a fictional autobiography.
Well, I was about to say there's would definitely be a lot of fiction tied within, but it is very based on. This would definitely be a real life event, kind of book. This is more of like, this is like somebody in the hospital documenting their last days, or somebody in jail, or somebody in prison on a death sentence documenting their last days, and writing about, everything that, it's kind of a, not like, you know, a goodbye letter. It's more of a, uh, it's showing everything that um, happened before the goodbye, and probably what caused the, yeah.
Okay, no, I like that. I like
Or
that.
caused
So,
the trauma, or caused the issue, or that, was the stepping stone into the bigger picture, the bigger ocean, the bigger fish to fry.
gotcha. Okay, I like that, and I do apologize because it seems that even in episode 83, I underestimate how overwhelming of a premise not only the book question air thing, the book metaphor, book in the library metaphor, or the book genre question can be. So, as per the response depicted in this session. I will definitely be providing a little bit more context, really, as we continue with this conversation. But reading this book, finding this book in the library, you having nothing to do, and I mean absolutely nothing to do with Jeelzebub, but instead as a reader, a listener, we foresee what is a perspective by perspective, end of the line, like any last words. These are those last words before a tragedy unfolds in someone's life. So, before we actually get into Under the Skin as well, the most important thing, like we were talking about earlier from a musical medium, if this is a book, right, now we're curious about why the book cover looks the way it does. So I want to go ahead and have you tell me about the artist behind this album cover, the conversations that occurred in making this album cover, and why do you think it correlates with the album name Invoking Havok so well? Which, again, I'm going to be typing all this out now because this is I know this would be a little bit much for me too if I had no idea. So
Yeah. Well, we'll start with the artist, Martina. Martina, if you're watching this, I really hope I'm saying your last name right. And if I'm not, you can DM me and let me know I'm butchering it. But Martina Mior, from Italy, she, as I said, I think the live stream that she did art for a couple Italian deathcore bands, Human Deception and Defamed. And her art is extremely, it has a pastel-like look to it, but at the same time, it's extremely pop out. Like, she really defines the things that, you know, you're supposed to be looking at, you know, in the, I mean, when I look at her works, I always think of the single cover for Defamed's Crystal Prison, where it's a key underwater, and you know, you got all the underwater, you got the stones, the leaves, but the one thing that's popping out the most, the one thing that you immediately see when you look at it, is the key. And that's one thing I loved about her art. And she's just such a great person to talk to. And a lot of the things that I had told her, because I had already had a reference photo, I wanted a snake. I didn't know what with, but I wanted a snake. And, you know, I told her, after eventually figuring out that a sword would be good, because, you know, we need something for that snake to be doing. You know, it can't just be a regular snake, you know, just slithering on by. No. So I said, let's do a snake around a sword. And I kind of specified more of like I wanted kind of like a knightsman sword, you know, not like a katana. I wanted something that looked medieval, like Zelda, very very Lord of the Ringsy. And when she and she had also asked if there was anything else I wanted in the background, and I wanted her, I don't know if it's easier to tell more than not, but with the grayness in the background of the album cover, I told her to give it a faint smoky feel. And man, I mean, we see the album cover, I'm not gonna lie, she came through really fucking really great with that. And the meaning, so like I said, I wanted the snake because the snake, to me, it represents a couple things. It's got double meaning for me. So one, it represents sin, obviously, because that's what it's, you know, always mostly represent in religious history. And the other thing is people, you know, as unfortunate as it is to say people, because, you know, everybody, you know, ends up meeting one or two or a few people in their life that end up, you know, as we would say, shed their skin, or so it's kind of a reference to just the fact that everybody's got skin and everyone can shed it, and it's also a snake. I mean, a lot of people don't like that, and like it's very intimidating to most to the
Yes.
eye. And the sword, actually, how I came up with that too, with the snake representing sin and I guess hardships, in hardships and kinships. The sword represents the violence and chaos that can come with it, and a lot of the destruction that it can cause to people or people's lives. Yeah, and I guess with the logo too. Back when I drew that, I had said, I was very inspired by, that wave of black and deathcore that was out at the time, because it was 2021-ish, almost 22 when I drew that. And there's three main parts in the logo that I drew that still to this day, that's the reason why I've used it on the last two releases, is the spider webs, the moon, and the noose. And the spider webs represent my fear of spiders, dude. I have terrible fucking arachnophobia. If I see a spider, dude, I'm either finding something to kill it immediately, and I'm gonna be keeping 6 foot COVID distance from that motherfucker when I kill it.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna be like, this is your house, and I'm gonna not be in that room for like 3 to 4 hours after I fucking view it, dude. I don't know what it is. Spiders have always scared me, and the cobwebs, are kind of a, hey, get over that, because it really is, it's irrational, and the moon, night, night over day. The moon, I think, is one of the coolest things in the world, and
especially in our world.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the noose, a lot of people, and I've had a person who actually ask me, because there's been a lot of logos to come out in the past 3-4 years with nooses on them. Mine is actually a lot more personal as to why it's there. I won't go into too much detail, but there's a reason for the noose, and I feel like it's also a way of overcoming that.
Yes.
And also, I've always thought of the gallows as being a very, very odd thing. That was a point in time where dude, the moral compass of humanity was just
not there.
And which another thing, which we'll actually get into that song when we talk about lyrics, when Greg said, I didn't even tell him to do this. He just sent me the lyrics, and when I read it, I was like, that is so fucking perfect. I'm so glad you did that. I actually put it on a t-shirt. Jeelzebub threads, if y'all want it. Dude, emerge from the gallows was the last line that Greg said, and Hell followed with. And I don't know if he did that on purpose from the logo, or if that was just something Greg had thought of, but I thought it was so perfect that he did that, because it merged so well with the imagery and everything, that I'm trying to write about. And
it's almost like with Invoking Havok, and Hell followed with, ended up being like one of the most important songs on that record, because it establishes a brand, and it also allows you to go full circle, especially during the creative process with Greg, And with Chris featuring on this album in the first place, you're like, you know what? Even if I don't make anything from this, even if I don't profit from this at all, I did what I was here to do on this album.
Yep.
That's a beautiful thing. So, let's see. Now that we've more or less discussed the context, the main symbols behind the album cover artist, now we dig into the substance. So, doing track-by-track lyrical analysis for Invoking Havok, we kickstart this beautiful session with track 1, Grave Gazer. What can you tell me about this track, my friend?
So Grave Gazer is part 1 to the last track on the album, Coffin Caller. Grave Gazer deals with the thought of morality, man, the thought of death and existence and life as a whole. And Grave Gazer, it talks a lot about, why am I here? And what am I supposed to fucking do while I'm here? And is anyone going to remember it? It's very, yeah. You're staring into the grave. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do before you get there.
Yeah.
And it has a kind of a double partish meaning with Grave Gazer is being, that depression, and depression is a big theme on this album. Depression is such a large issue in our world. I know a lot of people struggle with it. I struggle with it. And that's another part of this song, is it's detailing what somebody with possibly, depression or major depressive disorder is going through mentally, and how they foresee life on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's what Grave Gazer is mainly about.
Okay. And feel free, of course, without surpassing your own boundaries or causing yourself any discomfort. Like, if there are deeper things that you want to talk about that maybe Jeelzebub fans won't immediately understand with these songs, this is absolutely, undeniably the time to tell those stories. So just to offer you that, like, hey, it's okay. And if you want me to edit anything out as well, I'll gladly do that.
Right.
Track 2, we have Isolation.
So this, and I'm going to be honest, looking at track list, this is probably one of, if not the most personal on the album, because it talks a lot about being introverted, dealing with things like, abandonment, betrayal, shit, even small things like being homeschooled, going long periods of time without, really being in society. Isolation talks a lot about the mental strain that it can put on you, because let's face it, anyone in the world can say how much they love to be alone, but you can only be alone to a certain point that it really does. It takes a lot on and off of you. And yeah, isolation's for my introverts, for all my people who, you like to keep to yourself, you let other people start the conversations. That's exactly what it's about. And of course, again, another double meaning with, things like abandonment and, just being being pushed to the side, per se.
Yeah, and perhaps sometimes it feels better, or it feels better off that you end up being isolated because of prior negative affecting circumstances and the ramifications, this being the ramifications for the abandonment. I am very lucky to say that I've never really felt abandonment, but I did feel like there was an absence of emotional empathy with some of the people that I grew up with.
Definitely that too, for sure.
Not
family per se, but definitely peers. And
that happened way too often. And I mean, throughout the entirety of my life, I can say that, speaking for my own character, a little self-titled moment, I guess, here on the podcast, I've always tried to have the best intentions, but I've learned over the years that when you make it so blatantly obvious that you are either naively optimistic, willing to give people the benefit of the doubt right out the gate until they prove you wrong, which is just one of my philosophies. If you don't know somebody, don't pretend like you know them and assume that they're going to be bad. That's kind of like one of my things, but that's just coming from optimism. A lot of people decided along the way that they wanted to use my naive optimism and my ignorance in certain things to their advantage, and therefore certain paths were paved. And most of those people that wanted to use me in that form and wanted to be involved in indoctrinating me into all these very, very strange ways of life and these strange philosophies, well, eventually you got to be an individual and make the decision whether or not that is the path you want to take. But more or less, that's a very, very complex conversation for a different time. But it has me definitely thinking about abandonment. Like, sure, I never felt that, but it was almost as if some people wanted me to abandon my own philosophies and ideologies. That way I could accomplish their ambitions for them or alongside them, but without my own input, like, whatsoever. And I guess a certain part of me thinks that it does correlate only because some people, they won't abandon you completely, but they will try to convince you to abandon your own personality for their own personal gain, which I think is equally as bad.
For sure.
So that's track 2. Track 3, we have Death Weight.
I mean, this is something that everyone can relate to. It's basically just about feeling like there's so much fucking weight on your shoulders. I mean, it's too much to hold at once.
Right.
You know, like when you've got, you know, this problem on top of this problem, and then you've got, you know, these bills and this, you know, fucked up expired thing you gotta get fixed, and then you've got a bunch of other internal things, and then you've got external things like family, or, you know, death weight is just, it talks more so about the weight being so much that, you know, it will get you to a point that you break down, you know.
And that's fair, because that's kind of just modern society these days. It's like, really, since the turn of this century, you know, all the Y2K kids shout out in chat or whatever. But I don't know, it seems like we were kind of born and raised into a world, into a country, because, you know, me and you are from the United States, but it is kind of a global societal psychological epidemic now, where it's like, it's kind of better to be distracted by these more temporary things and these countless temporary issues. And it's like, well, if everything was perfect, then you question whether or not life would be boring, or if there would be a utopia because of the labors involved to make life perfect. And it ends up being this like psychological gaslighting for you within yourself, because you're like, well, even if things were easier, would they be better? You know, would they be satisfactory? Or am I so indoctrinated and convinced in the life that I've been living recently that if things continue being as complicated as they are, then I have things to shoot for, then I have ambitions to fulfill. It's a very strange conversation to have within yourself, let alone have with other people. Like, if life was easier, would life be easier? Would it be better? Or would it be just kind of boring? And then maybe certain things happen intentionally that kind of bring us right back into the cycle of slaving away for temporary, irrelevant things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think about stuff like that, and you're like, I wonder. Or at least I wonder about that often. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, even if you have those theories rolling around in your noggin, well, life can be difficult and is difficult on the level that it is for almost everybody right now. And I don't think that's right. I don't think it's fair that everybody is being universally humbled the way that they are being right now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you think you have life together? Fucking guess again. I'm like, bro, leave me alone. So I don't know, like, what's your stance on that? Like, obviously, this is your song about more or less the unbearable weight that is upon our shoulders for such a long time. But
yeah. And it talks a lot more about personal weight, you know, because mental weight, you know, because a lot of things can happen up here, because this is the strongest organ in your fucking body,
right.
You know, and you know, just the things that you consume, the things that you tell yourself on a day-to-day basis, the you know, the way you think is, you know, the way you are. You know, you are what you think, you are what you eat, you are what you yeah, and that's death weight, you know, when you have so much, you know, going on up there that it gets to that point where it's a death weight. Like, you either have already broken down from it, or and it does talk a lot about shit that's going on too in the world, but it's definitely way more focused on the mental side of just being burdened and, you know, having a lot to take head on. I also use the reference for what death weight means as the coin on the eye, because and sorry to get really dark here, but
no, you're good.
Sometimes that weight can be so much for somebody that, you know, it does becoming death weight,
right.
And it's unfortunate that people get so, you know, overwhelmed that they feel that's their only route, which it should never be anyone's route, you know.
Yeah.
But that's also talking about, you know, like I said, with the definition of death weight, playing on the definition with that.
Yeah. No, I like that. I really do. Because you're not wrong. It does make the album get super dark, but sometimes you need those darker depths that kind of sit with you at the bench. Just like, hey, this is valid. You're not evil. You're not scum for thinking this, but it's going to be okay. Like, let's see what we can do to help you move forward and get past this darkness. And this could be darkness sitting right alongside you too. This could be the Reaper. And he's like, dude, I've had a long day. I've had a lot of people do this already. So why don't we go ahead and take a 15-minute, right? Let's go ahead and see what I can do to help you not want to hang out with me for the rest of your existence.
Yeah. That's how you put it.
It's like, yeah, we never encourage, even in the darkest depths, in the boldiest corners of counterculture, I think it's safe to say that not many people encourage death upon oneself, but it's like embracing death and knowing that it is absolute and that your time will come when it's meant to come, but don't dwell upon invoking it yourself. You're not death, you're not Shinigami. Sure, you're capable of it, but act as if you aren't. Because once you distance yourself from that mindset, I think life is just meant to get so much better for you when you're not revolving your daily routine about, like, I could do this today, and just stop everything. Because I definitely don't want to be too graphic with my words and cause
Well, I was about to say, dude, the lyrics only get darker, so we may end up even graphicer. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I think this could be the darkest album that we've ever done press for, but I'm all for it, right? Because this is new, this is fresh. So track 4, we have Hell Followed With, featuring Greg Gilbert, my homie from Shrine of Malice.
Hell yeah, I love it.
And of course, on the record of my new homie, Jason Jeelzebub, what do we got going on here with Hell Followed With?
So this track is basically, what are you doing? Over there being goofy. It's basically talks about the end of everything. What hell would truly be like, you know? Hell followed with, you know.
Hello.
That song is very like what's it like down there?
Yeah.
You know, and it has a lot of references to Dante's Inferno, and not only that, the Four Horsemen, and that's more of a fantasy track. You know, built. It's kind of Hell Followed With and Deep Inferno are taking breaks from the true aspect of the music and going into more of the showy, like really, you know, just dark, like really destructive, you know, eerie lyrics, you know.
Yeah.
Shit that makes grandma cry. I mean,
so more or less, the next 2 tracks in this album are not only meant to tribute and pay homage to those who came before, those who inspired you, and their depictions, perhaps, of Dante's Inferno, captured then by Caesar, Aldrian, you know, Beelzebub, Alistair, or not Alistair, Astaroth, Beelzebub, Astaroth, Satan, how they are all just these behemoths residing in the depths, in the catacombs of Sheol. Your dog is so funny. Definitely a big dog person. Maybe these next 2 tracks are supposed to help listeners cope with the darker depths of this album by bringing more like epic imagery. So maybe if I could compare this album to an age long ago, and you were mentioning the gallows and when that was an active thing, when that was a very, very important thing, and people just took entertainment in seeing people hang, seeing criminals hang, or even wives saw pride in seeing their affair-ridden husbands just hanging by the noose. Maybe this is the difference between their daily lives and the gallows, or maybe their daily lives and going to a theater play to see an Edgar Allan Poe poem or epic being portrayed by random people that you don't even fucking know. Like,
right.
this is that more entertaining break in the album. But does then Hell Followed With, like, how much of Dante's Inferno and the lore, the fan fiction of hell that is Dante's Inferno, how much does this song and the Neurosis cover?
Yeah, so Neurosis, actually, that's where, and Neurosis and Apprehension are where the album goes back into, the
Right.
dark. Hell Followed With, it's actually more the Deep Inferno, which talks about Dante's Inferno. Hell Followed With is kind of setting up like how Gravegazer is to Coffin Caller being part 1 and part 2. Hell Followed With is to Deep Inferno as part 1 and part 2.
Okay, gotcha.
A lot of just calls to, sin, and, the fact that there could be potential that, in specific sin, you could be in specific place for it. And just talking about how, like I said, like from a viewpoint, that's essentially what Hell Followed With and Deep Inferno is going to hell, looking at it, the sounds, the smell, you are in hell. Like, you're experiencing what religion and media and everything has portrayed it to be, fire and brimstone. And I guess in this case, with the 9 circles, kind of touching on what it would be like to be in each said circle and to see, how it would feel to be around, seeing those certain punishments, and because of those things that certain people have done. Yeah, it goes into all that, because I feel like, people are, and obviously it's probably better to be focused on heaven, but sometimes you got to look down. I mean, you can't, we'll even take it as crossing a bridge, dude. You got to look down. Yeah. You have to. I mean, because if you don't look down, you're never going to either get over whatever it is you got, or, you're never going to have enough confidence to be able to look all the way down and look all the way up. Right. So yeah, and Neurosis. Is going, like I said, going back into that. That is probably the most mental health esque related song. Just the burdens that come with it, living with morbid and irrational thoughts, and things like I mean, all over the spectrum. Depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD. I mean, even simple things like insomnia. Neurosis is literally, mental health, mental strain, like, or a mental health problem. So yeah, and then Apprehension. I feel the pressure of this constant worry, thinking of things that just do not concern me. I let my head roll, and it spins out of control. I try to let go, but then the thought loop unfolds. After Neurosis goes a lot more into that mental health, with talking about my anxiety. It's very first person. Apprehension is extremely first person into having obsessive and looping thoughts, never being able to, sit back and relax, always worrying about something. Always, your mind's always on something. That's apprehension. You're always on edge. You're always fearful, can't catch a break from your own goddamn self.
I know how that feels.
Exactly what apprehension is. And then, yeah, like I said, Deep Infernos. Just kind of going back off of the story of what hell is.
Cool. After that, I mean, we have Dante's Inferno. So is it simply like your first musical depiction of like how you interpret Dante's Inferno, and then of course you wanted Chris to do his guitar feature on the song?
Yeah. So, and that's one thing again that you don't see. I mean, you see guitar features, but not as much as vocal features. And I've only seen Chris on Null Existence. I haven't seen anything. So I was like, I gotta give him some shine room.
Yeah.
And the one thing I love about that song was I wrote the Deep Inferno in like under 48 hours, and that section that I had intended him to be on is the most Avengers, like, we're at the top of the fucking mountain sounding like melody, you know?
Yeah.
Which is not something you hear in any of Shrine's music. And I think that was the best thing about it, and him being on there, was he added such a dissonant, but happy dissonant sound to the song. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have chose anybody else to do that feature.
Track 8, we have Wreak Havoc. Which I can only assume because of the misunderstanding by some fans as of recently. Like, oh yeah, your new album Wreak Havok, right? You're like, nope, Invoking Havok, but close enough.
And I understand where that comes from, because Wreak Havok was, well, it wasn't the first single to come out for the album, but it was the biggest to come out for it. So I do see, and you know, Havok, you know, a lot of bands don't do that, where, you know, they'll have an album title and it'll play off of something else that's on the album, but it's not the same. Like, it's very weird.
Right. So why did you end up deciding then to, like, because I can only assume that Wreak Havok is meant to be the closest thing to what would be the title track for the album.
Yes.
So
exactly.
In that case, why the adjustment?
So Wreak Havok in itself, the song is very so I guess the name, we'll start with the name. Now, Havok, the word chaos is a word that, you know, has always stuck with me, because it's, you know, it's always been a part of me, chaos. And Havok is a stronger, more extreme term for chaos. So Wreak Havok is, you know, the normal definition that's been being used since the 1800s in order to convey what, you know, widespread destruction or just crazy, you know, just brokenness looks like. Yeah. And then the Invoking, I didn't want to have a title track because, you know, I feel like title tracks are too, like, hey, look at me, I'm the poster child, you know? Yeah. And I wouldn't even say there's a poster child on it. I mean, I think Neurosis would be the poster child if there was any, but there is none on this album. And the invoking also comes from, I wrote a song back in like 2019 called Invoke the Succubus, and it was a fully clean guitar track. It was supposed to be inspired by a lot of the horror composition that's in the older Legend of Zelda games like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And that track, I was always so proud of that track, just for how it sounded and the name. So I wanted to pay homage to it by, using Invoke in some way, shape, or form. So I figured, you know what? Wreak Havoc, Invoking Havok. It's kind of the same fucking thing, just, obviously different wording.
Right. The first thing that I thought of with this was like Wreak Havoc is kind of like the command song. It's like a command action programming. And Invoking Havok is like, whoa, it's happening. By the time that this album is done, then Invoking Havok throughout the entirety of this track list will happen. Way past Wreak Havoc is more like, hey, by the way, and then the rest of the album. It's kind of like the first thing.
Yeah, no, that's, pretty spot on. Yeah. Every time I move my arm.
I love that dog. What's your dog's name?
Daisy.
Daisy. Aw. She seems like a sweetheart.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder what would happen if somebody with a ski mask came in here. I don't know if she'd be friendly or protective.
If she'd be Daisy or Daisy.
Yeah. Because she's got not Pit, but Staffy in her. And Staffy's known to be super protective.
Yeah. Well, track 9, we got Black Sheep. This.
Oh yeah, well also I forgot to mention with Wreak Havoc, the cool thing about that track is the lyrics weren't even personal per se. That was completely, I wanted to make something that I wanted to make the most like Cannibal Corpse graphic picture possible. Like, anybody who listens to it, like, that's something you can listen to when you're angry.
I see.
Hope, love, and faith, the big three. This was, I wanted Wreak Havoc to be complete opposite, fear, hate, and yeah. And then Black Sheep is, so Black Sheep's kind of like Isolation. Black Sheep is very personal, very based on, it's kind of what I think of myself, just around society and the world. Black Sheep, I feel like, I don't know, I'm something different, I just feel like I stand away.
Okay. Track 10 to conclude this album. As you said, this is the part 2 to part 1 of Gravegazer, not Grey Gazer. Grey Geezer. But Coffin Caller. What's the difference between this one and Gravegazer?
So, Coffin Caller is what depression looks like in the greatest form. Like, this, if any track is going to go on to, the day-to-day basis of just wanting to leave and cease to be. This is Coffin Caller. You know, it talks. I mean, it goes into the most graphic detail about, you know, that specific topic. Sheds light on, but it sheds light on how a lot of people feel. Coffin Caller is basically me trying to let everyone know, yeah, you know, you're going through this. You're not alone, you know, because a lot of people go through it. Myself are going through it, you know. Yeah, Coffin Caller might be the darkest track on the album.
Okay.
Lyrically,
Great way to include it then. Fair enough. Okay, and then, yeah, I mean, that is the end of the record. So question 4, kind of getting out of under the skin, but not technically. After conducting a lobotomy for Invoking Havok, and after us concluding the first half of the podcast session talking about bands that inspired you in Jeelzebub, what distinguishes Invoking Havok from other iconic records relevant to perhaps even the ones you mentioned today, in your own personal opinion?
I mean, honestly, a lot of my love for different. I mean, I'm pulling from different genres all the time. When I write breakdowns, dude, I'll pull from like pop music even sometimes. Like I love um you know, the fact that being, you know, a metal musician, you get to basically incorporate whatever the hell you want, you know, because um it's free game here. And, you know, I'm pulling from everything from groove to new metal to progressive metal, core, death metal, black metal, hardcore, classic rock, hard rock.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of people would be surprised to know that I like AC/DC. You know, I mean, they're one of the bands that I feel like has had a bigger impact on me, AC/DC and Kiss. And I feel like a lot of people, when they hear, you know, oh, you listen to this, oh, you listen to that, oh, you listen to the top 200. Yeah, I feel like that would help, you know, fire, you know, because when you pigeonhole, which I see happening a lot in the scene today, is a lot of bands, you know, either not on purpose pigeonhole or on purpose, you know, will say, you know, like the stereotype of death to all but metal on some Steel Panther bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like what you like, and what, you know, again, is distinguishing it is the fact that, you know, I mean, I used to be that way, but I'll listen to relatively anything now if it sounds good, and if it sounds good, it's influencing me.
Right.
So, you know, not just pulling influence from, you know, Lamb of God and Dire as Murder and Shrine of Malice, but also pulling influence from, you know, Kill the Noise, Knife Party, Skrillex, and then shit like, you know, Tupac and, you know, YG, you know, a lot of newer school, older school rap. You know, you even have things like older, like I guess a little bit of Prince in there, Michael Jackson, you know, shit like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what distinguishes it is, you know, again, you don't see in the scene nowadays, people are so open about musical taste or like guilty pleasure. Like, you know, you see it, but I just, you know,
You don't see it nearly as often as you used to.
still a lot of bands out there that, you know, are very elitist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them be elitist, you know what I mean? Okay, cool. So more or less question 4 is answered. Question 5, how and why did Invoking Havok become an album instead of an EP?
Oh man. Um Go big or go home.
Yeah.
I've always liked the concept of, you know, 10 to 12 to 14 songs telling a, you know, because when you have more, you know, more room to speak,
Yeah.
you know, more airtime, You know, it's it's easier to tell the story than just being able to only have 3 songs to say what you're trying to say.
Fair enough. I like that. And then I do believe, we are at the end. Question 6. Not really a question. Briefly discuss the future. Shout out to any bands or people if applicable.
Oh man. A ton of music. A ton of different music. Collaborations. A lot of stuff is going on behind the scenes. A lot of stuff I'm working on, ideas. Here soon. I won't say specifically when, but there is the possibility of a new single coming out in 2024 featuring somebody who actually just joined this band, and they put out an album in 2022, and they've actually been climbing the scene a lot, and I think he's going to add just all the more flavor to the song, so you can expect that very soon.
Awesome.
And then I've actually got another completely different solo project I'm working on, not Jeelzebub, something completely different that I won't say anything on, but I'll just say that 2025, expect some announcements of something different.
Okay, cool. And I think this is definitely a newer question that I aim to ask any and all artists, no matter like where they are in the world, where they are in the scene. If you could recommend a band that you think it would be easier to get access to and hosting on the show, what band would you want to see on the show in the near future?
I would love to see oh shit. Who's that one band I just got into? Oh shit. Can't think of their name. Well, yeah, Defamed. That's a big one. Crown Magnetar.
Oh,
I'd love to see a Crown Magnetar episode.
I will try to make that happen.
I would love to see a Crown episode. If not that, I would love to see Analepsy. I would love to see them Cytotoxin.
Ooh, yes. Oh my god. You're throwing in a lot of good ones.
Yeah. A couple of those. It's probably not even possible because they haven't said anything on social media for a long time. But there was a band that came out in 2018 on Slam Worldwide called Flesh in all caps. And they had an EP, a self-titled EP. They're from Sacramento, California. They had one self-titled EP, and that was it. I think that is the best slamming death metal band to ever come, ever. Ever. And if it was ever even possible that you could get in touch with even just one of the members of that band to talk about that EP and to, see what, dude, because I mean, I would love to hear, what was going on, where they were at, why they're, not doing it, haven't done anything since 4/20 of 2018. Oh yeah,
I'm trying to see if I can find them on Spotify because the only artist I'm seeing named Flesh has like this old English font logo, and I don't think that's the band I'm looking for.
It should be like a red logo.
See, Flesh Slam or Flesh self-titled EP.
Seriously, one of the heaviest things I've ever heard.
Okay. Ooh, okay. So they made an album back in 2018. They did a full full-length album.
Wait. Are you looking at the same one?
Hopefully, one sec.
I was about to say the release should have 5 songs, I think.
Yes, 5. Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, this is the self-titled EP. This was released in 2018.
Yeah.
They're located in Fresno, California.
Oh, okay. That's what I remember.
And then the EP was recorded, mixed, and mastered by Peter Spiwatkowski of Seraph Recordings, or Seraph. So that's pretty sick. I'll definitely look into that, because their logo is like pretty casual for my taste, but it still works. It still works pretty well. So okay, we got Crown Magnetar. You said Analepsy, Flesh, and what other band? Cryotoxin. Okay. Yeah, we will definitely look into those bands. I will try to make that happen, people, because those would all be really, really good sessions. But that will be the end of episode 83 of the Anatomy Crosscast, featuring Jason from Jeelzebub, or Jason Jeelzebub, period. His new album, Invoking Havok, is out now on Spotify, available for all you to listen to if you don't decide to listen to the front to back session over on Sean Cross. And if so, that's fine by me. But also, we would love to see the viewership. We would love to see how many of you might be interested in this gentleman's future. But this has been the Anatomy Crosscast, hosted by yours truly, currently on the 2nd of August at 2:03 p.m. Oh, we've been going for a long time. Holy shit! Currently at 959 subscribers. We're really hoping to get to 1,000 subscribers by like the tail end of the summer, because, well, when I really look into the statistics, they're only planning to give us like $1 per 1,000 subscribers over on YouTube. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm finally making money. $1.40. I'm like, oh fuckers.
I saw a meme the other day. It was like, your first 10,000 streams on Spotify. Here you go, and it was like half of a penny.
Well, Spotify is also fucked when it comes to the monetization. It's now that I think about it, I think everybody should start promoting Tidal instead, because they actually
Apple Music gives their artists good.
Yeah. But Tidal pays the most out of all of them. I think it's like 25 cents compared to the 0.0004
streams. Yeah, you're getting like 5 streams, you're getting over $1 on Tidal.
Exactly. So I think everybody should start promoting Tidal, especially if Spotify doesn't want to up the ante and update their standards per se. But this has been the Anatomy Crosscast, which will primarily be featured over on Spotify for podcasters. Yeah, this has been fun. This has been a really productive, very philosophical conversation, and we had some pretty good recommendations at the tail end of the session. So I'm looking forward to trying to get all those bands on the show. But until then, everybody, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in episode 84. Bye.